Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being the show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Nancy Drew, Season 4, Episode 10. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So immediately picking up where the last episode left off, Nancy has shot a poisonous arrow into Tristan and he reverts back into his human form. Now it is a matter of we have to save him, because it's not only a matter of pulling the arrow out and without like nicking an artery, but it is also that it's already too late. The poison is in him and there's no getting rid of it. Small amount of poison, a lot of poison. The fact is it wasn't a lot, doesn't do anything because it's still in his system and it's going to travel to his heart and that will kill him. And so they're on a clock. Because the thing is, the Sin Eater situation dies with Tristan. Like, if he dies, so does the Sin Eater situation as well. Because I guess it has to be a thing of, because this poison doesn't just destroy the body, it destroys the soul, because the Sin Eater situation is tied to the soul. So if you destroy that soul, then there's no more Sin Eater. But obviously for Nancy, it's like, I don't want him to die. Like, that is the silver lining to it. But it's not what George was kind of aiming for. But it is the thing of, we end the Sin Eater once and for all. But it's like, no, we're going to save Tristan. We're not going to do that. So all hands are on deck for this. I love that Bess is kind of removed from the situation because the glasses get brought in. Because I love that, Ryan's initial thought is, we can't let the glasses find out about this because they already have beef with us. And yeah, like, specifically, they already have beef with me, which is by association, they already don't like Nancy. And it doesn't help the fact is that she just shot their son and he's potentially dying because of her. So, but yeah, all hands are on deck about this. I mean, I love that it's just like, we quickly wrap up like, yeah, the 8 bodies that came back to life, yeah, that was us, the black sludge, and all, yeah, that was kind of us. It was them trying to save Tristan. Like, he's been dealing with the Sin Eater situation since he was like 6 years old. I was wondering about how all that, so based on what they were saying, is like, Tristan's not their biological son, he's adopted, which I was like, oh, that's interesting. I mean, I don't think it would have mattered even if it was biological, but I wonder, I mean, maybe I misinterpreted that. It sounded like they were like, I think specifically his mom was like, oh, adopted. So I was like, I wonder, does his birth parents have something to do with that? Most likely not. It is just a random baby gets chosen. The senior gets reincarnated into a random child. So I don't think who the biological parents are is going to be significant. There's so much I'm so curious about when it comes to this season of what direction things are going. I'm curious, like, how much of this is the season staying relatively the same and stuff being changed to kind of give it a proper ending, or how much of this is like once again, I know at least Supergirl is one example I know of, like, we kind of basically found out this is the final season, so we scrapped everything and rewrote everything practically. But I'm so curious, like, how much of this is the direction they were going to go, and maybe they were going to set up a 5th season with some of these storylines playing out a little bit differently, but they're going to end this way because they had to rewrite it. So that, I mean, how much is just, now we just completely scrapped the season, how much is we took elements from what we originally wanted this 4th season to be, and like I said, how much of this is, no, it's a lot of the same, just tweaked here and there. I'm always so curious about final season situations because it's like, they had enough lead up to know about, I think they had enough lead up to know that this was like the final season, so they had enough time to kind of change things. I believe, I could be mistaken. So I'm curious, like, how much of this was going to be that, like, away. It's one of those things, like, I don't know, maybe some of the writers or whatever have kind of put that out there. Well, it's not really, you know, they can't really say anything. I mean, maybe they said something before now, obviously with the WGA and SAG-AFTRA strike. So maybe they've said something previously about how that all played out, because obviously it's just kind of like, this is just one of those shows. It's like, I think it's just a casualty of just kind of like, yeah, the network shifting and stuff like that. So, because I want to say I saw something that was like, was just kind of like, yeah, we don't know why they decided to make this the final season. I don't know if like the numbers just, you know, it's a show that's, I think, well received enough, but I think maybe just not enough people watch. Once again, the network is transitioning to like transforming, so a lot of content is like getting kind of cut in a path regardless. You know, a lot of stuff already did. So I'm going on this massive tangent, but it's just that was just something that was kind of running through my mind. I mean, it's been running through my mind, but very prominently in this episode, especially as we're like a few steps away from the end of the show, you know. So, but either way, I thought it was such an interesting, like, obviously division of groups of everyone tackling this a different way. Nancy and Nick using temperance as like that dust that lets you go into someone's memory, and trying to figure out the last sin that he ate, because just like using a previous sin using the first sin as a poison, the most recent sin, the latest sin used, can act as an antidote, which is interesting how like the opposite side of the spectrum of how that works. It's kind of like the beginning is your end, but the end is actually your saving grace. It's like that's almost poetic in some regards. But yeah, the glasses have been curing, trying to find a cure for Tristan for the past 15 years. It's like, yeah, that's why they even got into the relic business in the first place. So I guess that's why they've been so cutthroat about stuff, why they've tried to like handle stuff the way they have with Ryan and Bess, because it's like, right, you're getting in the way of us trying to save our son. So, I mean, they've also made a lot of enemies, but it's because of their desperation to save their son that they are kind of willing to burn whatever bridges they have to kind of get what they need, because everything has been about trying to save their son. So there's altruistic reasons behind it. I mean, they're still dicks, I think, with their approach and the attempted murder, just to kind of scare people to kind of into letting them get what they want. So this episode did also bring up the complicated thing for Nancy of, finding out about Tristan. It's like, right, I thought you were, obviously things were super complicated between her and Ace. It's like, that's probably the most complicated relationship she's been in thus far. Like, yeah, previous relationships with like Nick and Gil like had their bumps, but it's like, a curse enacted by your ancestors, it kind of takes the cake. And now it's like, oh, I thought I was dating a normal guy, everything was fine, and now I find out you transform into a creature that eats sins. And it's like, it's a lot. It's not what I kind of went into this expecting and wanting, especially because I brought it up last episode. The irony is that she was going on and on about how like, oh, Tristan's kind of just normal and that's fine. Because to be fair, her life has been the furthest thing from normal for a while now, since the beginning of the series. But then it's like, just to find out, hey, Tristan's this thing, so it's kind of a complicated thing of like, if I survive this, I guess we go our separate ways type of thing. We got introduced and while Ryan and Tristan's mom were like bonding a little, which I thought was kind of interesting. It's like, right, I mean, Ryan being like, I work better when I'm talking. So they found out that someone was watching the Sinners. So it's like, first and foremost, who knew about the Sinners in the first place? It had to be someone that's associated with like that yacht club. So it probably narrows it down, but it has to be like someone from those to know about that. And also the camera and everything. So who was what? So I guess that begs the question. Part of me wonders, like, and I kept throwing this out there last episode. Well, no, maybe I didn't, because I was wondering, like, my thought was, I think the lady who took over what's her name? Kelly, I believe, is what Beth said this episode, but who took over the Historical Society and everything. My thought last episode was like, right, are we going to find out a supernatural thing's going to happen and she's going to need help, and that kind of puts Beth in a better position? Or is she kind of connected to this where, hey, she has a skeleton? I might have said that last episode or episode before last that maybe she has a skeleton in the closet. Maybe she had a sin that was eaten and she just doesn't remember. So maybe there's some association there. Maybe she's taking advantage, because she's all about kind of protecting this town's kind of image. So part of me wonders is like, could she be whoever it was that was watching, who knows who all the sinners are? It's like, what good would that do you though, considering that none of them remembers their sin, that anything ever happened? But it's like, who are you to, how would you take advantage of that? It's like, why would you be able to take advantage of that? That's what I'm so curious about. So that's why I'm like, Kelly feels like she might have like I said, if that's the character's name, I think it is. I think that's what Beth said. I always kept missing the character's name, but it's like, she seems like a viable option, but I'm like, I don't know how you would gain from that. Because once again, no one remembers these sins. And there's also like the thing of like what Judge Abbott said of like kind of you don't know what you're kind of getting mixed up in. I mean, we found out later on it's like, right, it's a monster associated with all of this, but the way he made it sound like there was something bigger at play here that I'm like, I have no idea what to really make of that. It's like, you don't think, I was like, I mean, obviously the Hudsons have a connection to that yacht club, so I'm like, you don't think Everett has anything to do with that? Like maybe he knew about the Sin Eater's existence and then he just kept an eye on it the entire time. It feels like it's got to be someone that's actively there. I mean, because it could just, like I said, it could be someone who works for Everett, but I would assume not. So it seems like it had to be someone else associated with that yacht club. I'm just like, how would you discovered that, you discovered I guess maybe you watched someone reveal their sins in that place, and then you set up the camera, but like I said, for what purposes? It could almost be a weirdly justice thing of like, right, here are all these people confessing their terrible sins and the terrible things they've done so that you can bust them later on for whatever reason. Well, because it ties in, interestingly enough, with the whole Carson and George of it all, because Carson doesn't like the approach. I mean, I was like, this ain't your first real tackle with the supernatural. I mean, you've always been aware of it, but I'm like, it's like, oh, we had to basically do a mystical blackmailing, extortion. It's like, oh, wait, the guy remembering his sin, you didn't say it was going to basically hurt that much when like you zap him. And it's just, Carson wasn't okay with it. And even George been like, really? Are you okay? Like, for her, like, this is run of the mill, but I think for Carson, it makes him conflicted because he's a person of the law. He's all about the law, doing the right thing. And for him, this kind of into that gray area. But for George, it's like, yo, the fact of the matter is, if we don't resolve this sin eating situation, there are so many crimes like that Judge Abbott was involved in. Like a girl had her head bashed and was covered up. These were like assault situations, attempted murder, that even Bree's crime of watching a guy drown in a tub. That it's like, these are crimes that we won't know about. So it's like, right, it's a greater good of like kind of handling this situation the way it is, because like he's trying to handle things from like a real world perspective of like, yeah, like this is what the letter of the law is and this and that, but it's like, yeah, that gets a little complicated when you throw the supernatural into it, which is kind of like obviously been a running theme this season of like Horseshoe Bay and the supernatural, where it's like everyone wants to act like it is nothing. I reiterate it every time, people trying to be like, oh, like the supernatural, blah 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 blah, but it's like, are you crazy? Horseshoe Bay is inundated with the supernatural. It's been tied to the supernatural since its foundation. It's always been a part of this town's history, and denying that is a grave mistake, because you don't learn from history, you are bound to repeat it. And this town's, one of its greatest sins is associated with, I mean, it's literally coming full circle that this town's original sin is coming back in the form of Tristan and the Sin Eater, because the Sin Eater is, in fact, the town's original sin, which, funny enough, the original Sin Eater had to eat. Either way, I went on that whole tangent, but I was just like, it feels like maybe whoever is doing this, whoever is watching those videos of who's getting their sin eaten, it's trying to get trying to keep a record, because they're trying to maybe prove. So but I'm like, who would have the motivations to do that? You know, who would know, and why would they know? Because I was like, blackmail doesn't seem like it would benefit you in that situation, considering technically no crime happened because the sin was eating and no one remembers it, you know? Then we also get into this interesting territory where when Nancy went inside of Tristan's memories again, because it's like, oh, the original Sin Eater, he will help you find out where the sins are stored. Because it turns out, hey, the last sin that was eaten wasn't the sin we thought it was, the guy that was cheating. It's like, yeah, that wasn't the last sin that was eaten. There was actually one eaten before that. Because after that, sorry. Because George never had her sin eaten, so it doesn't technically count. And also, I didn't just talk about it, but the black sludge that they needed to, like, oh, we could put it in someone and then kind of pump it out the sin, like that can't work, because the black sludge only comes out after the Sin Eater died. That's why, like, it's in their body, but it doesn't get produced. Those are all the sins that are kind of like produced as that sludge post-death. So either way, getting back to the point, Nancy goes and takes another trip inside of Tristan's memories because of their last trip. All of his previous lives are bubbling to the surface and kind of taking over for a little bit. I thought that was going to be more of an issue. It seems like maybe they were a lot more self-aware because they were handling things like, oh, we need to work on a cure, and the one from like the 70s where it was like, yeah, yeah, sure thing. It's like, it seemed, well, others seemed, one in particular seemed a little more erratic than others because it was going backwards to in reverse chronological order but Nancy was able to meet the original Sin Eater, which I kept wondering. I was like, I looked at that actor, I was like, why does he seem so familiar? I just can't place where I know him from. If I'm not mistaken, and do correct me in the comments down below because I should have looked into this, is that the actor who played the lead character in the show Trickster? He might have played, I think he played the main character in the show Trickster. That might be the same actor. I was like, because that actor looks so familiar, and I just couldn't place where I knew him from, and I was like, maybe that's him. I think that was the same actor, but I could be mistaken. But what's so interesting is, like, he knows Nancy, and he was like, yeah, we've walked this route time and time again. I was like, wait, what? And the moment they touched, there was electricity, and I'm like, what does that mean? Like, why does he know Nancy? And I'm like, now, I wonder, do they have like a Romeo and Juliet thing where like their souls always meet? Like, her soul has ended up in someone else's body and always like a reincarnated thing, which is interesting considering that kind of ties into like Temperance's thing, but it didn't really seem like, well, because I was about to say like Nancy's circumstances being what it is when it comes to like the Hudson family and stuff, but I was like, could there be a correlation there? Could it be that like he knows Nancy because maybe like he kind of had like almost like Beauty and the Beast Juliet thing where, hey, Romeo and Juliet thing where maybe in the past her and him were together and they were lovers, and so that's why he knows Nancy type of situation. That was my immediate thought, but I was like, maybe they've had like, maybe each reincarnation both for Nancy and him have always found each other, but it never worked out or something. I don't know what that was. Even the spark that they had, like, what is that about? So it goes deeper than just Nancy liking Tristan, that maybe there is like a cosmic destiny thing going on there. I just don't know what that is. But Nancy never got to see what the previous sin was that she used to cure Tristan. So there's that. But like I said, at the same time, there's the situation with the person who was watching the sinners. They found out who, well, while Ryan and Mama Glass were looking into it, she hid who the previous sinner was. And I was like, but why? What would be the significance? And now we later on find out, oh, it's because the previous sinner whose sin was eaten was Nancy's, which begs the question, wait, what? Because of the timing of it, it would have had to be recent because she had to do it before George. But I was like, why would Nancy do that? She's like, what would I know? She's like, that doesn't make sense. I'm like, so did someone fake that? But why would they? What sin did Nancy have eaten in that time frame that would have, what could she have done? That doesn't make any sense to me. Like, what was she potentially getting rid of? What was her sin? Was it Ace? Was that what it is? Because her and Ace, well, no, because she still seems, I was about to say, like, could it be related to Ace? But I'm like her feelings for Ace or something, is that what she considers as him? But I'm like, what would she have, is it something we're not aware of as the audience? Like, what would she have had eaten? That's what I'm so curious about. So that's why I'm like, did someone fake that to make it so that Nancy would be collateral damage in all of this? Because I was almost starting to think, like, you don't think Nancy's the one that had the recording, but, like, why would she? Maybe that was her sin, and maybe she found out about this place, and then she got rid of the sin of, like, keeping a photo of all these people. Like, that's why I'm like, it doesn't make sense to me. What sin? I can't even begin to think what that could be. That's the only thing I can think of. Like, not unless she was somehow responsible for the videotaping them because she found out about the place, and then she put a camera there to kind of spy on people because, like I said, she had the altruistic thing of these people committed sins and needed to be brought to justice, kind of like the Carson and George of it all right now, and that maybe she felt guilty about it, and maybe she did something about one of the previous sinners, and she felt guilty about it and tried to erase the sin herself, and she just completely forgot about it because that place looked like it was abandoned. Like, the latest photo was of George, so it's like whoever was there, like, either they saw that George was there, or maybe they just weren't there anymore, and they, Nancy completely forgot that she had did that because it was part of the sin that got eaten. That's the only thing I can think of. I have no idea what to make of that. Which sucks for Nancy and complicates it. It's like, the glasses and, Ryan were in a better place. Oh, well, things got even more complicated because now they're going to sacrifice Nancy because the only way to cure the sin eater is like you have to basically sacrifice the body of the last sinner, and she was the last sinner. So no wonder Mama Glass didn't want to say anything about what she found. I was like, why are you being so cagey about it? We're supposed to be on the team. You seem like you were really about this, but now it's like, right, to save my son, I'm willing to sacrifice your daughter. Especially because it's like, right, your daughter almost killed my son, so it's only fair. Like, what were you going to do in the aftermath of once your son is saved? Like, what are you going to do when it's like, when he finds out, hey, you sacrificed a girl I like, potentially love, to save me? I can't live with that. I'm not going to be okay with that. And for them, it's like, right, we might be the bad guys in your mind, but as long as you're alive, then you'll still be alive. Even his dad being like, hey, you'll understand why we did this one day. Obviously, parents doing whatever it takes to protect their children, we get it, but it's like, there is a limit. There's certain lines you shouldn't cross, and this is one of them. So now Ryan knows what they're up to, so it's going to be a matter of trying to stop them before they do what they do, which is so sad considering, like, hey, this is a person who went through a lot to help save your son. But maybe their argument is, hey, you'll save him in the long run, so your sacrifice is sad but necessary. Maybe that's their justification. We also have the other side of the episode with Ace's ghost situation, right? Time is running out before, like, Mia's parents come to, like, collect the remains and try and, like, have DNA run to see if it's actually Mia, but he knows it's not Mia. We still don't know who the ghost really is, so Bess, trying to avoid being around the glasses, is willing to help out Ace. But whoever this ghost is has a very deep connection with Ace, and I'm curious why. Because maybe there's some connection where it's like what the ghost is going through, and maybe Ace's kind of loneliness and complicated thing between him and Nancy, maybe that's what the ghost gravitated towards. Which it is kind of neat, and of course Bess would have the advice of, oh, right, this ghost is kind of close to you, which Ace is like, no, I'm just trying to help them out so they can cross over. It's like, yeah, like, I know that better than anyone, that you can say that now, but don't let these feelings kind of get in the way. Like, don't let it become more than that. She knows better than anyone because of the Odette situation. I know what it's like to be in love with a ghost, someone from who is gone, and it's their time to pass on, kind of wanting to hold on to them. Especially where he is emotionally after the whole him and Nancy thing, so... Because they ended up finding the real Mia because the ghost, she pointed them in the right direction. Even showed up to protect Ace when a tree was about to fall on them. So, who is she? Even to the point she actually showed Ace what she kind of looked like before. But I was like, I don't think it's someone, obviously no one we would know. But what's the significance of that? Is that going to tie into the overarching plot? Once again, it's like you'd assume any plot threads are... Maybe it's just part of Ace's arc in his story, but you'd assume this tie into some shape or form with the main story. I don't know. I mean, maybe her connection is, if it's not Nancy, which, like I said, I'm leaning towards not being Nancy, but maybe it is Nancy in some regard, the person who set up the camera to watch, get photos of the sinners and so on and so forth, right? I mean, those are just the photos, but I don't know if it was recording audio or not, too. Because there's no video, it's only the photos. Like, you got a picture of the sinner. So, maybe this ghost has some correlation and connection to the person who was recording those. Maybe, or like I said, maybe it just could be just an Ace situation all on his own. We got that. We got to wrap up the sin eater thing. We've also still got the Kelly... running the historical society thing. How does that play out? There's just some interesting plot threads left. Obviously, we still got 3 episodes, but I'm so curious to see where all this ends up taking us and how it all plays out. Because with 3 episodes left, it's like, because it almost feels like it is the end game, but I'm just so curious to see how it all fits together, like how these storylines close and in what manner, and how the series goes. It's definitely going to be interesting to see what the next episode has in store for us. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.